I'm Luke Melky, helping you master the art of filmmaking. Today we're talking about... Alright, so here we are inside of Windows Explorer with our basic file structure. I know some of you are going, oh no, you're using Windows, you have to use Macs. I'm not one of those that says you have to use Mac, you have to use Windows. I'm one that says use what works best for you with the way you work. Windows just works best for me because I can build my own PCs. It's just something I grew up with. I work better with that. I have an iMac. I've not been a fan of it. I've had a lot of issues with it, so I stick with my PC. But these same basic structure folder things should work the same basic way. So really what is key when you're doing editing and staying organized, you have to stay organized in your file system, especially if you're going to be editing with someone else, possibly hand the project off to someone else or working with a crew. You have to use a system that everyone can understand. It doesn't necessarily mean everyone has to have the same file system, just like you don't have to use exactly what I'm doing here, but it should be something that's relatively easy to figure out. I can give this project over to someone else and they can figure out what to do with it because it's pretty obvious how it's labeled. So here's a file structure for a short film we put together about 1.5 years ago called Where Was My Guide? As you can see here, we had 12 scenes. I'm not sure exactly what happened to scene 1. This is an older project, so I don't actually know what happened to scene 1, but here's basically what I do. I have an ADR folder. For those of you who don't know what ADR is, it stands for Automated Dialogue Replacement. I don't know why they call it because there's nothing automated about it. But that's where you have your actors redub their own sound on top of themselves. So if there is an issue with the audio in the background or some other type of audio issue, you re-record it and place the actor's audio on top of the scene's audio to make it match right. So I do that for a few of the scenes. I try to get the best audio I can get in the scene live, but it's not always possible, or there's always just some kind of glitches. So ADR there. I also have some behind the scenes footage. This is for some of our marketing stuff or some just fun stuff for the actors and crew and that. Some captured frames. These are frames I pull out of the project that could possibly use for marketing or other things like that as well. I have a cast folder. This is where I took a bunch of pictures of the cast, put that in here. I also have this on another spot in the computer that I've used a different system for marking things, but I put it in both spots here. I have a music folder. Inside the music folder here, there's not the best organized inside of here. This was some of my kind of my random, just throw it here. Let's think through things. It was more organized in round 2. This is where I actually did my final edits and the audio, things like that. These files right here are more my splat. Here are my ideas. Let's see what happens. So going back here, I also did a promo where hey, this is what we're doing. I was recording myself, trying to give awareness for the film. So I have stuff in there, but also I break everything down by scenes. This is huge. Some people just kind of put all their files into one project. I've worked with people like this, and then they wonder why it's taking them a long time to edit. Well, you really have to have some type of structure of how you're going to do it. It's easy to find files. You might be able to edit faster for a first take without organizing things like this because you're just editing as you're putting the files in. I've seen that, but if you have to come back and do any tweaks, it can be an absolute nightmare. So I highly recommend doing something like this. And here's the structure I use. I break it down by scenes. Inside of there, I have audio. Here it's scene 1, take 1. This scene was a very short scene. It only actually had one take or one shot. So we didn't label it scene 2, shot 1, take 1. It was just one shot, so we just label all different takes. Here we had 7 different takes for it. The same in the footage folder. I try to keep my audio and my footage separate because I record my audio on a different device and then my footage obviously on a camera. Some like to put them in the same folders. I prefer to keep them separate. It's just, for me, it's just easier to think that way. But I also have acting. So inside of the acting folder, I have the same basic labeling as I did for the audio. That way it's easy to match them up. When I'm in the editing software, okay, sync this audio with this video file. It makes it a lot easier that way. Inside of here, for the same shots, I also had a computer that we were doing a webcam with this of my main actor. That's what we were cutting back and forth between. So I also had a folder inside of there named computer. I could have made a folder inside of here that was also camera A. That was our primary camera. I just chose not to do it here. As you'll notice here, most of the video files are labeled the same way as the audio, but not all of them are. And here's the reason. These ones were just test shots, so I didn't go through and relabel these ones. And this one was just a behind the scenes shot that was really short. We didn't move it to the behind the scenes shot. I just noticed now that it wasn't moved. Being almost a year and 7 months after the project was done. It's kind of late to really have to worry about it now. So if I know that they aren't files that are really going to be used in the project, I just don't rename them. Sometimes I delete them. Sometimes they are shots I might potentially have to come back and do something if something corrupts with some of the other files. So I at least have something. So that's why I keep them. I don't just delete them right away. But keeping your audio and your video files named the same thing is very, very important to make sure you can line everything up there. So we also now need to talk about backup. Backup is huge. You need to make sure you have backups of everything. I say you have at least 2 backups of everything. 3 backups is a good idea if you're doing bigger projects. And here's the way I do backups. This is what a lot of people recommend for this, is you have an internal backup. Notice here I have drive A and drive B. This is where I back a lot of these up to each other. That's my internal backups. I have other drives in here that aren't listed. That will sometimes back things up on as well. But I will make sure A and B are typically mirrored. Some people set it up so A and B are automatically mirrored. So you do something to one, it automatically does the other. That's sometimes a good idea. I just kind of prefer the whole do it manually to know things are actually transferring and I know things are working properly. So that's kind of why I do it the manual way. The other thing you want to do is have an external drive as well. I have a 10 terabyte drive sitting on my desk here that I do most of my external backups to. I have smaller hard drives, so I'll sometimes do backups to as well. If it's a really big project, I'll put it on external drive and actually put it off location somewhere. So if something happened to my office, had a fire or something like that, my external hard drives are not in the same location as the fire in the computer. But my primary backup is my 10 terabyte on my desk here. It's not a Thunderbolt 3 or 16 or whatever they're going to be at right now. And it's not a USB 3. It's just an older drive, but it backs everything up. It's not one I want to edit from, but it's good for backup because it's just large. And then another place you want to back up stuff to is the cloud. Video files, I know, don't back up to the cloud too well because they're so huge, especially if you're going to start shooting in the larger projects like 4K, which is what I shoot in primarily. Some of my shoot in 4K, ProRes, 10-bit, 422. I mean, those are close to 500 gigs an hour. And that's really not something that's feasible to store online because it's just huge. It takes forever to upload and download again. But I would recommend at least having your project files online storage. That way you don't lose the project file, because the project file is a harder one to remember to back that up every time. I have to admit, something I don't do probably often enough is backing up my project files, because I just save it, I'm done with the project. Well, no, I have to make sure I copy that somewhere as well so I have storage. We'll just put it on line storage. It's automatically backed up in the cloud. So that's what I recommend for at least your project files. So now we're going to move on. How do I actually organize the stuff within my editing suite? Now that we are inside of our editing suite, as you can see, I'm using Adobe Premiere. These same basic file structure things are going to work in Final Cut, Avid, Sony Vegas, pretty much everything that's out there. But I'm just going to show you in Premiere because that's what I use the most. So I'm going to have, again, my footage folder. I like to try mirroring what's on my file structure on the computer as well as in my editing suite. So I have my footage folder here. I have broken down between all the scenes. Here's where I did something slightly different. I put the audio within the scenes themselves. Some projects I put an audio folder and a video folder separate. This one I probably should have labeled it footage and audio because I'm still not sure which one I prefer. It partly depends on the project. What does the project kind of require of me to do, or what works best with that project? So I have that broken down for each of these as well here. Then I have my images folder. These are files like I have here, the Where Is My Guide image. This was kind of the idea. This was the look and feel we were going for initially. We changed it up a little bit. So I kind of have something to reference, but also I was putting into the video itself. I'll usually use PSDs, but this time was a JPEG here just for reference. I have my music folder. I have a random folder. This is where I put stuff I don't know where to put it. I could have a specific folder just for solids, and then a specific folder for adjustment layer, and a specific folder for all these other things that I'll probably not use more than 2 or 3 things within that folder. And then I would just have 10, 15 extra folders that I don't need. So I put them all into the random folder. That way I can just condense everything and keep from having so much clutter. Because one of the big things about it being organized is just eliminating clutter, making it easy to get through. I will also put sequences. I will edit my scenes per sequence. You can see here I have all the different sequences up. This way I can edit per this sequence, which is going to be different than if I am editing in sequence or scene 3 versus scene 2. I might have different requirements for those scenes that would have a different file structure or layer structure within them. So here I have camera A, camera B, which is camera B was actually the computer monitor, as you can see right here. And then I also have my external recorder. These are for the audio layers here. It's important to label them so you know if you're editing something, what is on which track, especially if someone else comes and tries editing with you. They know what's on that track. I'll often label the video layers as well. I'm not showing them here right now, but label them as well as the adjustment layers or effects layers, things like that. Those aren't quite as have to be one way or the other, because sometimes the layers kind of have to mix and match between them, because depending on how you layer different effects, it can cause the video to look different. In audio, if you layer them one on top of the other, it's going to sound the same. It doesn't matter which order they're in. In video, it does actually make a difference. So the reason I like to edit per scene instead of just put them all in one giant project is a lot easier to take little tiny chunks at once. Just like it's a lot easier to eat a pizza if it's cut up into pieces than take the whole pizza and just try shoving it in your mouth. It's going to work a lot better if you take it one small piece at a time. And then I can edit here, and obviously like each scene has its own requirements of what works best. Like this one you see has a lot more layers and some mix and matching than the other one does. Most of these scenes are rather simple. It won't make that big a difference. But if I was trying to put together, this is just a 20-minute film, all these different files together, it's just confusing. So I go to my master sequence, and then I put them all together in order. It's just a lot easier for editing, keeps things a lot cleaner and simpler. I also have a bloopers and then some different effects shots and other things, like I have a rumble. That's where I actually compose my own music for this one. Technically, it's just one low tone, but I say I'm a composer because of that one. Then also my sound effects folder. I have text. This is stuff that I have text on top of, like the credits and things like that at the end. So it's huge to make sure you keep yourself organized, not only in your file structure on the computer itself. It's important to have the backups, but it's also very important to stay organized and neat and edit clean in your edits within the editing suite itself, because that's where it's really going to make a difference when you're working with other editors. As the world of filmmaking becomes more collaborative, especially remote collaboration, you need to make sure you have your system down where someone else can jump in and start working with you, because a lot of these people you're never going to actually meet in person. You're going to have online acquaintances, online connections that you won't have the time to walk through and talk through and get to know them. How do they work? You have to have a system that works and it's easy to figure out right off the bat. You don't want to have to be working frustrating, going, why do they do it this way? Where is this stuff? I've worked on projects where the people just were not organized. They didn't label things right, and it just makes things a real pain to work with. And those are people I would rather actually not work with again. And don't be that person where someone doesn't want to work with you again. You want to make sure you're organized, stay clean, stay systematic, and people want to work with you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, share, comment below. Let me know if you have any questions about other things about editing or just the filmmaking in general, because I'm here to help you master your film craft. If you liked this video and found it helpful, please subscribe. You can also like and share, or if you have any questions, comment below.